The combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Cronus sector. What they saw made even Admiral Taeyang pause. The Harvester fleet was massive. 40 ships, each one enormous and alive. The vessels looked like they were made of muscle and bone. Tentacles hundreds of meters long drifted in space. Bioplasma weapons glowed with sickly green light. The Harvesters were not expecting an attack. They had been preparing their assault on Thraxis, arranging their ships in travel formation. When the human and coalition fleet appeared, there was a moment of confusion. That moment was all Taeyang needed. All ships fire at will. Target the largest vessels first. Show them what happens when they threaten innocent lives. The indomitable spirit fired its main cannon. The weapon was a gravity beam that tore through space itself. When it hit the nearest Harvester ship, the creature screamed. The sound came through space somehow, a terrible wailing that made everyone uncomfortable. Part of the ship simply ceased to exist, ripped apart at the molecular level. 200 other ships opened fire. Railguns launched metal projectiles at incredible speeds. Missiles streaked through space trailing fire. The barrage was overwhelming. 3 Harvester ships died in the first minute, torn apart before they could respond. But the Harvesters were not helpless. They recovered from the surprise and began to coordinate. Their bioplasma weapons fired back, streams of burning energy that melted through shields and armor. A coalition cruiser exploded when plasma hit its reactor. 2 human destroyers were caught by tentacles and crushed like toys. The battle became chaos. Ships weaved and dodged. Explosions filled the space between fleets. Lieutenant Yuna worked frantically at her station, tracking targets and calling out warnings. Chief Engineer Bora redirected power to damaged sections, keeping the indomitable spirit in the fight despite heavy damage. Commander Dae Hyun led Ghost Squadron into the heart of the battle. 20 fighters, small and fast, darted between the massive ships. Their mission was critical. They carried Dr. Mina's quantum disruptor mines. If they could place those mines near the Harvester ships, it might turn the battle. Captain Jae Sung flew beside Dae Hyun, coordinating the squadron's movements. His voice stayed calm even as plasma fire filled the space around them. He called out threats and gave orders with perfect timing. The pilots trusted him completely. Dae Hyun pushed his fighter, the Raven's Claw, to its limits. He flew through a gap between 2 Harvester ships so close he could see details of their organic hulls. Tentacles reached for him, but he was too fast. Behind him, 3 other fighters were not as lucky. They were caught and destroyed. We are almost at the deployment zone. All fighters prepare mines. On my mark, release and scatter. 3, 2, 1, mark. 20 fighters released their mines simultaneously. The small device is activated, sending out pulses of quantum energy. The effect was immediate. The Harvester ships began to lose coordination. They stopped working together. Some ships fired on their own allies, confused and disoriented. Admiral Taeyang saw the chaos in the enemy fleet and knew this was the moment. All ships full assault. Hit them while they are confused. Do not give them time to recover. The human and coalition forces surged forward. Ships that had been fighting defensively now attacked aggressively. The disoriented Harvesters could not coordinate their defense. One by one, the massive bioships began to die. But victory came with a cost. 5 more human ships were destroyed. Dozens of coalition vessels went silent. Thousands of people died in explosions or were pulled into space when their ships broke apart. The battle was winning, but the price was terrible. Commander Dae Hyun tried to lead his fighters away from the battle zone, but a Harvester tentacle caught his ship. The Raven's Claw was pulled toward the massive creature. Dae Hyun could see an opening in the hull like a mouth ready to consume his fighter. He made a desperate decision. He overloaded his engines, pumping all power into them. The engines exploded with incredible force. The explosion was so powerful it tore through the tentacle and damaged the Harvester ship. Dae Hyun's fighter was thrown clear, spinning wildly through space. Jae Sung saw his commander in trouble and broke formation to help. He flew to the damaged Raven's Claw and used his fighter's tractor beam to stabilize it. Other squadron members formed a protective circle around the 2 ships, fighting off any threats while Jae Sung pulled Dae Hyun to safety. Ghost Leader, are you okay? Dae Hyun, respond! After a long moment, Dae Hyun's voice came through, weak but alive. I am okay, barely, that was too close. Good work getting me out, Jae Sung. Ghost Squadron returned to the indomitable spirit. We did our job. The surviving fighters made their way back to the carrier. Out of 20 fighters, only 12 returned. 8 pilots had died completing the mission. Daehyun felt the weight of those losses heavily. Those were his people, his responsibility. On the indomitable spirit, Admiral Taeyang directed the final stage of the battle. The Harvester fleet was broken. Their coordination was gone. Individual ships tried to flee, but the human and coalition forces pursued them relentlessly. By the time the battle ended, 35 of the 40 Harvester ships were destroyed. The remaining 5 escaped into deep space. Taeyang stood on the bridge and looked at the damage report. The numbers were sobering. 42 ships lost, over 30,000 people dead, tens of thousands more wounded. The victory was real, but it hurt. He activated the fleet-wide communication channel. His voice reached every surviving ship. All personnel, this is Admiral Taeyang. We have won the Battle of Cronus. The Thoraxis system is safe. 8 billion lives have been saved. But we paid a heavy price for this victory. Thousands of our people gave their lives today. Honor them by remembering why we fight. We fight so that others may live. The message ended. Across the fleet, crews processed what had happened. Some celebrated the victory. Others mourned lost friends. Most felt both emotions at once. Chief Engineer Bo-Ra worked without rest coordinating repair teams. Her ship had taken massive damage. Hull breaches on 7 decks. 1 engine offline. Weapon systems damaged. It would take weeks to fully repair, but she would get the indomitable spirit combat ready much faster than that. Dr. Mina studied the remains of destroyed Harvester ships. She collected samples and ran analysis. What she discovered was troubling. The Harvesters were showing signs of desperation in their biology. They were starving, consuming everything because they had no choice. She brought her findings to Admiral Taeyang in his private office. He looked tired, older than he had 3 days ago. Command took its toll, especially after a costly victory. Admiral, I found something in the Harvester biology. They are not evil in the traditional sense. They are desperate. Their species is dying. They consume other civilizations because it is the only way they know to survive. Taeyang rubbed his tired eyes. Does that change anything? They still killed billions. They would kill billions more if we let them. No, it does not change what we must do, but it might change how this ends. If we can find their source, their home base, maybe we can offer them an alternative to extinction. Maybe we can end this without destroying them completely. Taeyang thought about this for a long time. Finally, he nodded. Keep researching. If there is a way to end this war without genocide, I want to find it. But until then, we keep fighting. The Harvesters will attack again. We need to be ready. News of the victory at Cronus spread through Coalition space quickly. Lieutenant Su-jin broadcast messages to all Coalition worlds, sharing footage of the battle. For the first time in months, people had hope. The unstoppable Harvesters had been stopped. Supreme Chancellor Thalos addressed the Galactic Council from Velaris Prime. His speech was broadcast across hundreds of worlds. He praised the human fleet and acknowledged that humanity had saved the Coalition. Some council members were uncomfortable with this admission, but none could deny the truth. The Antarian representative, who had been so hostile during the first meeting, approached Admiral Taeyang personally. The large reptilian being bowed slightly, a gesture of deep respect in Antarian culture. I was wrong about you and your people. You did not come here for glory or conquest. You came to help. I apologize for my words. The Antarian fleet will serve under your command for the rest of this war. Taeyang accepted the apology gracefully. We all do what we think is right. You were protecting your people's pride. I understand that. Now let us work together. This war is not over, and he was right. 3 days after the Battle of Cronus, long-range sensors detected Harvester movements. They were gathering forces again, preparing for another massive assault. This time they were targeting Velaris Prime itself, the heart of the Coalition. The real test was still to come. Admiral Taeyang stood in the war room aboard the Indomitable Spirit, studying tactical displays. Intelligence reports showed the Harvester fleet gathering in deep space. This time they were bringing everything. 3 Hive Mother ships led the force. Each Hive Mother was 5 times larger than any Harvester vessel seen before. Dr. Mina stood beside him, her face pale. These Hive Mothers are different. They are not just ships. They are living command centers. Each one coordinates dozens of smaller vessels. If we can destroy them, the entire invasion force will collapse. Taeyang nodded slowly. Then we target the Hive Mothers, but they will protect them heavily. Getting close enough to do damage will cost us dearly. 3 days. That was all the time they had to prepare. Taeyang ordered the construction of defensive platforms around Valaris Prime. Engineers worked day and night, building weapon satellites and shield generators. Every available ship was called in. Coalition vessels from across the galaxy arrived to join the defense. The combined fleet now numbered over 500 ships. It was the largest military force the galaxy had seen in centuries. Human destroyers flew alongside Antarian cruisers. Coalition carriers worked with human support vessels. For the first time, the different species truly operated as one force. Lieutenant Sujin worked as the liaison between different species. She had learned dozens of alien languages and understood their different military protocols. When confusion arose, she stepped in to clarify. When tensions flared, she smoothed them over. She became invaluable to the unified command. Commander Dae-Hyun prepared Ghost Squadron for what he knew would be their hardest mission. His fighter had been repaired after the damage at Cronus, but he still remembered how close he had come to death. He gathered his pilots in the briefing room. We lost 8 pilots at Cronus. I will not lie to you. This battle will be worse. The harvesters are bringing everything they have. Some of us will not survive, but if we fail, billions die. Your families, your homes, everything you love, so we do not fail. We fight until we win or until we cannot fight anymore. The pilots understood. They were afraid, but they were also determined. This was what they had trained for their entire lives. On Valaris Prime below, civilians prepared for the worst. Evacuation ships stood ready to take people to safety if the defense failed. But most people chose to stay. They wanted to see the battle. They wanted to witness humanity and the coalition standing together against extinction. The harvesters arrived exactly when predicted. The sky above Valaris Prime turned dark as hundreds of bioships dropped out of hyperspace. The 3 hive mothers appeared last, massive beyond belief. Each one was like a small planet, covered in organic armor and bristling with weapons. Admiral Taeyang gave the order calmly. All ships, defensive formation Alpha. Hold the line. Do not let them reach the planet. The battle began with a massive exchange of fire. Both fleets unleashed everything they had. Space filled with weapons fire, explosions, and debris. The defensive platforms around the planet added their firepower, creating a wall of destruction the harvesters had to push through. But the hive mothers were incredibly tough. Railgun rounds that could destroy normal harvester ships just made small wounds on the hive mothers. The creatures healed almost as fast as they were damaged. Energy weapons were even less effective. The massive bioships pushed forward relentlessly. A coalition battleship exploded when a hive mother's tentacle pierced its hull. 3 human destroyers were caught in bioplasma fire and melted. The casualties climbed rapidly. Chief Engineer Bora watched her damage reports with growing alarm. Admiral, we cannot keep this up. We are losing ships faster than we can replace them. Those hive mothers are too strong. Taeyang knew she was right. They needed a new approach. That was when Captain Ji-won contacted him from her ship, the Hammer of Dawn. She was the commander of a siege cruiser designed for destroying planetary defenses. Her ship carried an experimental weapon called a tectonic disruptor. Admiral, I have an idea. The tectonic disruptor can tear apart anything at the quantum level. But it needs to be fired at close range, very close range. Let me take the Hammer of Dawn in. I can disable one of those hive mothers. Taeyang understood what she was asking. The Hammer of Dawn would have to fly directly into the enemy formation, absorbing massive damage to get close enough to fire. It was almost certainly a suicide mission. Captain, you know the odds of survival are minimal. I cannot order you to do this. You are not ordering me. I am volunteering. Someone has to do it. Let it be me and my crew. We knew the risks when we joined the fleet. Taeyang felt the weight of command crushing down on him. He was sending this woman and her crew to their deaths. But if he did not, everyone might die. He made the hardest decision of his life. Approved. May fortune favor you, Captain Ji-won. All ships provide covering fire for the Hammer of Dawn. Clear her a path. The Hammer of Dawn broke formation and accelerated toward the nearest hive mother. Dozens of ships focused their fire on enemy vessels in her path, trying to create an opening. Ji-won pushed her ship to maximum speed. Bioplasma fire tore through the Hammer of Dawn's shields. The hull began to melt. Systems failed across the ship. But Ji-won kept going. Her crew stayed at their posts even as sections of the ship vented into space. They were committed. When they reached point-blank range with the Hive Mother, Jiwan gave the order. All power to the tectonic disruptor. Fire everything. The weapon fired. It was not a beam or a projectile. It was a wave of quantum disruption that spread through space. When it hit the Hive Mother, the massive creature convulsed. Its entire structure began to tear itself apart at the most basic level. The Hive Mother screamed, a sound that echoed across all frequencies. But the energy feedback from the weapon destroyed the Hammer of Dawn. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash. Captain Jiwan and her entire crew died instantly. They had succeeded, but the price was their lives. Admiral Taeyang closed his eyes for a moment, honoring their sacrifice. Then he opened them and continued commanding. They died to give us a chance. Do not waste it. All forces focus on the second Hive Mother. Show them what their sacrifice means. The destruction of one Hive Mother broke something in the Harvester formation. The smaller ships that had been controlled by it became disorganized. Coalition forces saw the opening and pressed their attack. Colonel Minho led a boarding operation on the second Hive Mother. His Marines, both human and alien, launched from assault ships and cut through the organic hull. Inside they found a nightmare landscape of pulsing organs and flowing biomaterial. But they pushed forward, fighting through defensive organisms. Minho led his team to what scans indicated was the central nervous cluster. They planted fusion charges throughout the massive chamber. As they retreated, harvester organisms tried to stop them. Half the Marines died covering the retreat, but the charges were set. The explosion cascaded through the Hive Mother's entire system. The creature died from the inside, its body tearing apart in massive convulsions. 2 Hive Mothers down. 1 remained. The third Hive Mother tried to retreat, but Ghost Squadron prevented its escape. Commander Dae-hyun led his fighters in a desperate attack, targeting the creature's engines. They planted charges and fired missiles at critical points. The Hive Mother was slowed, giving the main fleet time to surround it. The final Hive Mother fought desperately, killing dozens of ships before it finally succumbed. When it died, the remaining Harvester fleet broke completely. Without the Hive Mothers to coordinate them, the smaller ships panicked. Some fled, others fought suicidally. Within hours, the battle was over. Valaris Prime was saved. But the cost had been terrible. Over 100 ships destroyed. 50,000 dead, including Captain Jiwan and her entire crew. The victory tasted bitter. Admiral Taeyang broadcast a message to all forces. We have won a great victory today, but we have lost great people. Captain Jiwan and thousands of others gave their lives so that billions could live. We honor them by finishing what they started. This war is not over, but the tide has turned. The Harvesters can be beaten. We have proven that today. On Valaris Prime, billions of people celebrated. They had witnessed the greatest battle in galactic history. They had seen humans and aliens fight together and win. The coalition would survive. Hope had returned. The 3 weeks of travel felt like an eternity. Every day reports came in from coalition space. More worlds were falling to the Harvesters. The death count climbed higher and higher. Admiral Taeyang read each report carefully, his face showing no emotion, but inside he wondered if they would arrive in time. Dr. Mina spent her days in the science lab aboard the Indomitable Spirit. She had samples of harvester biomaterial that coalition forces had recovered from destroyed ships. Under her microscope, she saw something remarkable. The material was alive, even separated from the main ship. It tried to rebuild itself, growing new structures. She called Admiral Taeyang to the lab. He arrived with Commander Dae-hyun, who wanted to understand the enemy they would soon face. Mina showed them her findings. The harvester ships are partially biological. They can heal damage quickly. But this gives us an opportunity. Living things have weaknesses that machines do not. They need coordination. They need communication between parts. Dae-hyun leaned forward, interested. What happens if we disrupt that communication? Mina smiled. Then they become confused, disorganized, vulnerable. I am working on a device that can do exactly that. Quantum disruptor mines. If we can get them close to harvester ships, we can break their coordination. Taeyang nodded slowly. Good work, Doctor. How long until these mines are ready? 2 weeks. Maybe less if I skip sleeping. Do not skip sleeping. We need you sharp, not exhausted. But make these mines a priority. They might save many lives. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Bora worked with her teams to modify the fleet's weapons. Human ships used kinetic weapons, firing solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. These weapons were different from the energy beams most Coalition species used. Bora believed kinetic weapons would be more effective against the Harvester bioarmor. She tested her theory using the biomaterial samples. When energy beams hit the material, it absorbed the energy and healed quickly. But when solid projectiles hit, they tore through the material, creating damage that took longer to repair. Her theory was correct. Bora reported her findings to Tai Yang. He immediately ordered all ships to maximize their kinetic weapon loadouts. Missiles, railguns, and mass drivers were loaded with extra ammunition. If they were going to hurt these creatures, they would do it the old-fashioned way with raw force. Commander Dae Hyun trained his Ghost Squadron relentlessly. The pilots practiced formation flying, evasive maneuvers, and attack runs. His second-in-command, Captain Jae Sung, designed new tactical patterns specifically for fighting the Harvesters. Jae Sung was methodical and careful, balancing Dae Hyun's aggressive instincts. The pilots respected both leaders. Dae Hyun taught them to be fearless. Jae Sung taught them to be smart. Together, they created a squadron that was both brave and tactical. On the final day of travel, Lieutenant Soo Jin received a transmission from Coalition Space. She was the communications officer and had been learning alien languages during the journey. The message was from Supreme Chancellor Thalas himself. He wanted to speak with Admiral Tae Yang. Tae Yang stood on the bridge as Thalas's image appeared on the main screen. The Chancellor was a tall being with 4 arms and silver skin. He looked exhausted and his eyes showed the strain of leading a losing war. Admiral Tae Yang. Thank you for coming. I will be honest with you. We are losing this war. 3 more worlds fell this week. Our military forces are depleted. Some species in the Coalition want to surrender. Others want to destroy our own worlds rather than let the Harvesters take them. We are desperate. Tae Yang's voice was calm and steady. We are not here for politics or praise, Chancellor. We are here to fight. Tell me where the enemy is strongest. That is where we will strike. Thalas was surprised by this response. Most military leaders would want to start with easier targets, building confidence with small victories. But the human admiral wanted to go straight for the hardest fight, the Cronus sector. The Harvesters are gathering a massive fleet there. They plan to attack the Thraxis system next. 8 billion people live on those worlds. If Thraxis falls, it will break the spirit of the Coalition. Many species will surrender after that. Then we go to Cronus. Prepare your forces to support us. We will stop the Harvesters there. The transmission ended. Tai Yang turned to his bridge crew. They all looked nervous but determined. He spoke to them with confidence. I know you are afraid. Fear is natural. But remember why we are here. Billions of innocent lives depend on us. We are the legendary fleet. Today we prove that the name is deserved. All hands prepare for combat. We arrive in Cronus in 6 hours. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Coalition space. What they saw made even the veteran crew members gasp. The Coalition staging area was a massive orbital fortress above the planet Valaris Prime. Hundreds of alien warships were docked there, many showing heavy damage from previous battles. But what caught everyone's attention was the damage to the nearby planets. 3 worlds in the system showed signs of Harvester attacks. Black scars covered their surfaces where cities used to be. The oceans were gray and lifeless. These planets were dead. Lieutenant Yuna, who had transferred from the Distant Watch to serve on the Indomitable Spirit, stared at the dead worlds with horror. She had seen death before, but nothing like this. Entire civilizations erased. Tae Yang noticed her expression. He walked to her station and spoke quietly. I know it is hard to see, but this is why we are here. To make sure this does not happen to more worlds. Stay focused, Lieutenant. We need you. Yuna nodded and returned to her work. She was young, but she was strong. She would not let fear control her. The legendary fleet moved into formation around the fortress. Coalition sensors detected the human ships and initially panicked, thinking it was another Harvester attack. The human fleet was that large and powerful. But Lieutenant Soo Jin quickly broadcast identification codes, and the panic turned to amazement. Coalition officers could not believe what they were seeing. 200 human warships, all pristine and powerful. The flagship alone was larger than any Coalition vessel. Rumors had spoken of humanity's military strength, but seeing it in person was different. Admiral Tae Yang was invited to meet with the Coalition War Council aboard the fortress. He took a shuttle over, bringing Dr. Mina and Commander Dae Hyun with him. When they entered the council chamber, They found themselves facing dozens of alien species, all watching them with a mixture of hope and suspicion. Supreme Chancellor Thalos greeted them warmly. The other council members were less friendly. One species, the Antarians, were particularly hostile. Their representative, a large reptilian being, stood and spoke with anger. "Why should we trust humans? You have kept to yourselves for decades. You ignored our requests for cooperation. Now you come here and expect us to follow your orders? We do not need your charity." Tae Yang looked at the Antarian calmly. "We are not offering charity. We are offering survival. You are losing this war. Your pride will not save you from extinction. We have weapons and tactics that can hurt the harvesters. Use them or do not. But do not waste our time with politics while people are dying." The room fell silent. No one had spoken to the Antarian representative like that before. But the truth in Tai Yang's words could not be denied. The coalition was losing and they needed help. Dr. Mina stepped forward and displayed her research on the chamber's screens. She explained the quantum disruptor mines and the effectiveness of kinetic weapons. She showed battle plans and tactical suggestions. The council members listened carefully. Even the Antarian representative paid attention. After an hour of discussion, Thalos called for a vote. Should the coalition military place itself under human tactical command for the upcoming battle? The vote was close, but it passed. Admiral Tae Yang now commanded not just the legendary fleet, but also the remaining coalition forces. Tae Yang stood before the council and spoke his first orders. All damaged ships will remain at the fortress for repairs. All combat-ready vessels will join the human fleet. We move to Cronus sector in 12 hours. We will not wait for the harvesters to attack. We strike first. Prepare your crews. This will be the fight that changes everything. Back aboard the indomitable Spirit, the crew prepared for battle. Bora's engineers checked every weapon system twice. Daehyun briefed his pilots one more time. Dr. Mina finished the last of the quantum disruptor mines. Taeyang walked through the ship, visiting different sections. He spoke with crew members, learning their names, thanking them for their service. He knew that many of them might not survive the coming battle. The least he could do was let them know he saw them as people, not just soldiers. 12 hours later, the combined fleet jumped to hyperspace. 300 ships, human and alien, traveling together toward the biggest battle any of them had ever faced. The war was about to begin in earnest. Captain Hyunwoo sat in his chair on the bridge of the distant watch. His ship was small, just a frigate that watched the borders of human space. The stars outside the window looked peaceful. Nothing had happened for weeks. The crew was relaxed, going through their usual routines. Lieutenant Yuna worked at her station, monitoring signals from deep space. She was young but talented. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls as she checked different frequencies. Most days she found nothing interesting. Today was different. A beeping sound filled the bridge. Yuna's eyes went wide as she stared at her screen. The signal was strong and desperate. It was encrypted, but she could tell it was important. She turned to Hyunwoo with a worried face. "Captain, we have something. It is coming from Coalition space. The encryption is military grade." Hyunwoo stood up from his chair and walked to her station. The Coalition was the alliance of alien species that controlled much of the galaxy. Humans had peaceful relations with them, but both sides kept their distance. A military signal from them was unusual. "Break the encryption. Let me hear what they are saying." Yuna worked for 10 minutes. The encryption was complex, but she was skilled. Finally, the message played through the bridge speakers. What they heard made everyone stop working. The voice belonged to Supreme Chancellor Thalos, the leader of the Coalition Council. His words were clear and frightening. 27 billion dead in 3 months. 600 worlds under attack. An enemy called the Harvester Collective was destroying everything. Their ships were huge and almost impossible to kill. Coalition forces were losing badly. The message was a plea for help. The Coalition was asking humanity to send military forces. In exchange, they offered technology and trade agreements. But more than that, the message carried something humans rarely heard from the proud alien species. It carried fear. Hyunwoo felt his chest tighten. 27 billion dead. The number was so large it was hard to understand. He looked at his crew. They all had the same shocked expression. "Send this to Earth immediately. Mark it highest priority. The Defense Council needs to see this now." The message reached Earth in hours. At Earth Defense Command, alarms rang through the building. Admiral Tae Yang was in his office when the alert came. He was an older man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had fought in wars before and knew what death looked like. But when he read the coalition message, even he felt worried. He called for an emergency meeting. Within an hour, the top military leaders and scientists gathered in the war room. Dr. Mina arrived carrying data files about the harvesters. She was a scientist who studied alien life. Her colleagues thought she was strange, but no one could deny she was brilliant. Dr. Mina stood before the council and displayed images on the main screen. The harvester ships looked like nothing humans had seen before. They were organic, like living creatures. Each ship was the size of a small moon. They had tentacles that grabbed smaller ships and crushed them. Their weapons fired streams of bioplasma that melted through armor. These creatures do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They consume everything. When they finish with a planet, nothing remains. Not the cities, not the oceans, not even the air. They take it all. One of the generals asked the obvious question. Why should we help? This is not our war. Dr. Mina looked at him with intense eyes. Because if the coalition falls, we are next. The harvesters will not stop. They cannot stop. Every world they consume gives them resources to build more ships. If we wait until they reach our borders, it will be too late. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what she meant. This was not about helping aliens. This was about survival. Admiral Tae Yang spoke for the first time. His voice was steady and strong. We have a fleet that was built for exactly this situation. The legendary fleet has been in reserve for 30 years, waiting for a threat big enough to justify its use. I believe we have found that threat. The discussion continued for hours. Some argued it was too dangerous. Others said humanity should focus on defending Earth and let the aliens handle their own problems. But slowly the mood shifted. The evidence was clear. The harvesters were an extinction-level threat. President Yoonji made the final decision. She was a strong leader who had guided Earth through difficult times. She stood before the council and spoke with authority. 60 years ago, Earth faced destruction from an asteroid. We could not save ourselves. The coalition shared their technology with us. They saved billions of human lives. Now they need our help. We will not abandon them. Admiral Tae Yang, you have full authority to mobilize the legendary fleet. Tae Yang nodded. He felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. He would be leading hundreds of thousands of people into a war against an enemy that had already killed billions. But he did not hesitate. This was his duty. The orders went out across Earth and all human colonies. Military bases erupted with activity. Ships that had been in storage were brought online. Crews received emergency deployment notices. Weapons factories increased production to maximum capacity. In orbit around Mars, the Titan shipyards began the greatest mobilization in human history. 200 warships started their activation sequences. Engineers worked day and night checking every system. The ships were powerful and advanced, representing the best of human technology. The largest ship was the Indomitable Spirit. It was 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. Admiral Tae Yang would command from this vessel. As he walked through its corridors for the first time in years, he remembered why humans had built such powerful ships. The galaxy was dangerous, and sometimes strength was the only language that mattered. Dr. Mina worked with her team to prepare intelligence reports. She studied every piece of data about the harvesters. She learned their attack patterns and tried to find weaknesses. The more she learned, the more worried she became. These creatures were efficient killers, but she also noticed something interesting. Their ships seemed to work together like parts of a single mind. Meanwhile, in coalition space, the war continued to go badly. Another world fell to the harvesters. Billions more died. Supreme Chancellor Thalys watched from his command center on Valaris Prime. His hope was fading. The coalition military had fought bravely but could not stop the enemy advance. Then a message arrived from Earth. Thalys read it 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. Humanity was sending help. The legendary fleet was coming. For the first time in months, Thalys felt something he had almost forgotten. He felt hope. The humans were known for their military strength. If anyone could stop the harvesters, perhaps it was them. Back on Earth, Commander Dae-hyun received his orders. He was the leader of Ghost Squadron, the most elite fighter pilots in human space. His mission was to train his squadron for combat against the harvesters. He gathered his pilots in the briefing room. Listen well. We are going to fight an enemy that has killed billions. The odds are not in our favor. Some of us will not come home, but if we do not fight, everyone loses. We are the best pilots humanity has. Now we prove it, the pilots understood. They were scared, but they were also determined. They had trained their entire lives for moments like this. 3 weeks later, the legendary fleet was ready. 300,000 personnel stood at their posts. Every ship was armed and prepared. Admiral Tai Yang gave the order from the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit. All ships prepare for jump to hyperspace. Destination Coalition Space. Our mission is simple. We go to war. The fleet jumped together, creating a massive ripple in space. People on Earth looked up and saw the flash of light as 200 warships vanished. The legendary fleet was no longer a myth kept in storage. It was real, and it was going to face the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. The journey would take 3 weeks. During that time, Tai Yang prepared his forces. They ran combat drills and studied enemy tactics. Dr. Mina continued her research, looking for any advantage they could use. As the fleet traveled through hyperspace, every person aboard knew what was coming. They were heading toward a war that had already claimed billions of lives. But they also knew something else. Humanity had answered the call for help. Now they would show the galaxy what humans could do when pushed to fight. After the victory at Valaris Prime, the Harvester forces retreated. For 3 weeks, they withdrew from Coalition space, abandoning conquered worlds. Dr. Mina and Commander Seung Ho worked together to track them. Using quantum trace analysis, they discovered where the Harvesters were going. The location shocked everyone. The Harvesters were heading to a point between galaxies, a place where no stars shone. Long-range scans detected a massive structure there. It was ancient, built millions of years ago. This was the Harvester home base, their last refuge. Admiral Tai Yang called a meeting of senior officers. The holographic display showed the structure in the void. It was enormous, bigger than most planets. Supreme Chancellor Thalas attended via communication link from Valaris Prime. We have a choice. We can pursue them and end this threat permanently, or we can fortify our borders and hope they do not return. I want opinions. Colonel Min Ho spoke first. We should pursue. If we let them recover, they will attack again. Finish the war now while we have the advantage. Dr. Mina disagreed. I have been studying harvester biology. They are not evil. They are desperate. Their species is dying. We should try to communicate before we destroy them. The discussion continued for hours. Finally, Thalas made his position clear. The Coalition Council has voted. We support pursuing the Harvesters, but we also support attempting communication. Try to find a peaceful solution. If that fails, do what must be done. Admiral Tai Yang made his decision. We go. The legendary fleet and any coalition ships that volunteer will make the journey. We leave in 3 days. The fleet that departed was smaller than before. Many ships needed repairs and could not make the journey. But 150 human vessels and 70 coalition ships volunteered. It was still a powerful force. The journey took 6 weeks. They traveled through empty space where no stars existed. The darkness was total. Many crew members struggled with the isolation. Dr. Hayin, a psychologist who had joined the fleet, worked constantly to help people cope with the psychological strain. During the journey, Lieutenant Yuna detected strange transmissions from the Harvester structure. She worked for days to decode them. What she found surprised everyone. The transmissions were not military communications. They were a distress call repeating endlessly. She brought her findings to Dr. Mina and Admiral Tai Yang. They listened to the decoded message. It told a story of tragedy. The Harvester's home galaxy had been consumed by a cosmic anomaly. Only a fraction of their species escaped in the ancient structure. They had been wandering for thousands of years, their resources depleting, desperately searching for a way to survive. Tai Yang felt something he had not expected. Sympathy. The Harvesters had killed billions, but they were also victims. They were refugees who had chosen the worst possible way to survive. Understanding did not excuse their actions, but it complicated the moral picture. When the fleet arrived at the structure, what they saw changed everything. The structure was not a war factory. It was an ark. Scans showed billions of Harvesters in stasis inside, civilians waiting for a home they might never find. The military forces were just a small fraction of their population. The structure was also failing. Ancient systems were breaking down. Parts of the structure were already dead. The Harvesters inside lost forever. The aggressive expansion into coalition space was a last desperate attempt to gain resources to repair their ark. Admiral Taeyang faced the hardest decision of his life. He could order an attack and likely destroy the entire harvester species. They deserved it for what they had done. But that would make humanity no better than the monsters. Or he could try something no one expected. He could offer mercy. He authorized Dr. Heian and Dr. Mina to attempt communication. They broadcast a message using quantum frequencies. We know your story. We know you are desperate, but your survival cannot come at the cost of genocide. We offered dialogue. For hours nothing happened. Then a response came. A single harvester consciousness separated from the collective and communicated directly. It identified itself as Nexus Prime, the leader who had ordered the invasion. The communication was difficult. Harvester thought patterns were completely alien. But slowly understanding emerged. Nexus Prime explained everything. Their dying galaxy, the desperate flight, the failure to find a home, the decision to take resources by force because asking had failed before. Admiral Taeyang listened to all of it. Then he made an offer that shocked even his own crew. Cease all hostile actions immediately. Submit to monitoring. Face justice for what you have done. In exchange, we will help repair your ark. We will provide resources. We will help you find a place to rebuild your civilization peacefully. Nexus Prime was silent for a long time. The offer was unexpected. Humans had every reason to destroy the harvesters. Why show mercy? Taeyang's answer was simple. Because extinction should be the last option, not the first. Because we believe in giving second chances. Because we are strong enough to choose compassion. The Harvester Collective debated for hours. Massive energy fluctuations rippled through the ark as billions of consciousnesses argued. Finally, Nexus Prime responded. We accept your terms. We will cease aggression. We will face judgment for our crimes. We only ask for the chance to survive. The treaty negotiations took weeks. Supreme Chancellor Thalas traveled to the Ark personally to oversee the agreement. The Treaty of the Void established several key points. The harvesters would settle in an uninhabited sector of space. They would allow coalition monitoring stations. And most importantly, those responsible for the worst atrocities would face trial. Nexus Prime volunteered to be tried first. The trial was broadcast across all coalition worlds. Lieutenant Sujin served as translator as the harvester leader accepted responsibility. Nexus Prime did not make excuses but explained the desperation that drove every decision. The judges listened carefully. The verdict was unprecedented. Nexus Prime and other harvester commanders were sentenced to lifetime service. They would spend the rest of their existence helping rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. It was justice without execution, accountability without revenge. The legendary fleet began its journey home. The voyage back felt different. They had not just won a war, they had prevented 2 extinctions. Commander Dae-hyun sat in his fighter bay, thinking about the pilots he had lost. 23 names he would never forget. Captain Jae-sung found him there. We did good work. Those we lost would be proud. We proved that humans can be warriors and peacemakers. 6 months after returning to coalition space, the political landscape had completely changed. Humanity was offered full membership in the Galactic Coalition as equals. Admiral Taeyang was appointed the first human coalition security coordinator. Dr. Mina established the Institute for Interspecies Understanding, bringing together scientists from dozens of species. Dr. Heian became its director of diplomacy. Their work would help prevent future wars through knowledge and communication. The Harvester Quarantine Zone became an unexpected success. Provided with resources and space, the Harvesters began rebuilding peacefully. Nexus Prime led reconstruction efforts on Harvax Falls, the first world the Harvesters had destroyed. The symbolism was powerful and intentional. 3 years after the war ended, Commander Sung Ho led a cultural exchange delegation to the Harvester Ark. What they found was remarkable. A civilization learning to thrive through cooperation instead of consumption. Former enemies becoming neighbors. On the 10th anniversary of the distress call, a monument was unveiled on Valeris Prime. It showed different species standing together, including a harvester figure. The inscription read, "When the galaxy cried for help, humanity responded with strength and compassion. Here we honor all who fell, all who fought, and all who chose mercy." Admiral Taeyang, now retired, attended the ceremony. A reporter asked what he considered his greatest achievement. He thought carefully before answering. We proved that real strength is knowing when to fight and when to extend a hand. We saved not one civilization but two. That is what I am most proud of. Captain Hyunwoo stood beside him, the man who had received the first distress call all those years ago. He reflected on how everything had changed. That message did not just summon the legendary fleet. It summoned the best of what humanity could be. Chief Engineer Bo-Ra had retired to Mars, where she taught young engineers. Commander Dae-hyun trained new generations of pilots, making sure they understood that being a warrior meant protecting life, not just taking it. Lieutenant Yuna became a senior officer, her career launched by that first crucial signal detection. The legendary fleet remained active, but its purpose had changed. It was no longer just a weapon. It was a symbol, a reminder that the galaxy could face any threat by standing together. Years passed. The wounds of war healed slowly, but they did heal. Human and coalition children grew up in a galaxy where cooperation was normal, where different species worked together, where former enemies could become friends. The story of how aliens cried for help and humanity responded became legend. It was taught in schools across hundreds of worlds, not as a story of human superiority, but as a story of what was possible when people chose compassion over cruelty.